Good morning. We're going to go through the next part of ecology today. We're going to get up to biomes, and then for in replacement of your Friday missed class, you have a worksheet that you're going to do. Okay? Huh?
What?
Friday there's no class. Because I'm nice like that. No, because I won't be here. So we don't have a class on Friday. But in place of that, you have a worksheet to do. And yes, I know it's Stayuka and there's Taste of ASCs on Thursday night. You're welcome. Okay? You're welcome. At any rate, you have a worksheet that you will have to do. Okay? Going through the 8 terrestrial biomes and aquatic biomes, so that you have to know the parts of each, et cetera, okay? That your quiz will be on Monday.
Quiz on Monday.
On the worksheet stuff, and anything we've done in ecology, okay? What's that, Dina? What? What'd you say? Okay, so, needless to say, that worksheet will be posted on Moodle. Okay, so it just basically lists the 8 the terrestrial and aquatic biomes and asks you to fill in characteristics of each. So you have to do a little bit of research, look it up in your book a little bit, et cetera, et cetera. There's actually plenty of which that's already in the PowerPoint slides, so it's not like you have to go far to find it. So it's just a matter of, we're just not going to cover it in class, so you have to go through it. Okay? It's not too much to ask, I don't think. All right. But when we left off, we were talking about how climate affects distribution of plants and animals, and we talked about how climate changes depend upon seasonality. We talked about differences in terms of a macroclimate and a microclimate, and now we're really talking about other influences on climate itself. So seasonality, amount of sunlight that's sunlight exposure per day, all right, intensity of sunlight, other things, bodies of water, okay? And I like to use this example every year, okay? For the most part, how much snow does Springfield get as opposed, anyone from Rhode Island here? Where in Rhode Island?
Tiverton, Rhode Island.
Tiverton. Westerly. Oh, schmoops. All right. Westerly. Okay? Westerly's by the coast, right? All right. Generally, and I like to use Rhode Island as an example because it's obviously next to the ocean. Okay? Westerly generally gets how much snow as opposed to Tiverton or other, actually Tiverton's sort of out West Bay, so it tends to not get that much snow either. But say Burrillville, Woonsocket. More or less? I'm asking the Rhode Islanders in the group. A lot less. So typically, by the coast, you get a lot less snow than inland areas. Why? Because it's warmer by the water. Salt water doesn't necessarily freeze every winter like the lakes up here do, right? All right. So it tends to be a little bit more moderate in terms of temperature. That large body of water is a big temperature sink, right? There's a lot of moisture there, and it helps to help regulate temperature. On the flip side of that, so basically in the coast, it's a little bit more moderate temperature, less snow as opposed to more rain in terms of precipitation during the winter, right? Let's talk about temperature differences in the summer. In Providence, which is further away from the coast, even though the bay extends up, it tends to be a little warmer than in Westerly. What's about the degree difference, Andrew? A few. Usually it's like around the coast, it's at least 5 to 10 degrees cooler, especially in the summer, than inland areas, mainly because temperature is being moderated by the body of water around it. All right? So Oceans, right? They're currents. And we'll talk about this in a little bit. Large lakes. What happens in anyone from Western New York? Nobody from Western New York. Pennsylvania, Ohio. What happens, what is in that area in terms of large body of water? Great Lakes. What happens to the amount of snow that, say, Syracuse or Rochester get over the winter? They get a lot. Why? What's that called? Lake effect snow. Okay? So the amount of water, because it's a large body of water, okay? It gets cold, it freezes over, all right? But that moisture is there and helps increase the amount of precipitation on the eastern side of of the Great Lakes. All right? So, it helps to moderate the climate of nearby terrestrial environments. Right? So if you live close to the coast, right, typically temperatures tend to be a little bit more moderate. All right? Currents. We're going to talk about the California current and the Gulf Stream current. All right? The Gulf Stream, right there, so we talked about the Gulf Stream in terms of, or the jet stream in terms of air patterns. The Gulf Stream is a current in the Atlantic that brings warm water in towards Florida and up through the coast, the eastern seaboard, okay, into the North Atlantic. The California current carries cold water southward along the western North America. Temperatures. Look at that California current. What do you know about temperatures and weather along the western border or western coast of the Pacific coast of the United States? Seattle, does it get really warm? No. Oregon, Oregon's a rainforest. Okay? San Francisco, Northern California, does it get really warm? Sometimes. Usually average temperature is about 65 degrees, right? Tends to be really foggy because of the cool water. You get down to Los Angeles, then it starts to get warmer, okay? Mainly because of the current. All right? Look at the Gulf Stream in terms of the warm water out of the Atlantic Ocean. Okay? Warm water bringing it to Florida. What do you know about Florida water temperatures throughout the year? It gets warm. Okay? This Gulf Stream also helps to push hurricanes or storms along the eastern seaboard as well. Okay? So, helps. All right? So, what does that do in terms of warm water? If you have a warm water area, okay, what does that do in terms of temperature? Right? So think about sitting on the beach in the Dominican Republic, right? You're just nice and sun's beating on you. Oh, isn't that nice? I picked the Dominican for a reason, by the way. Okay. So sitting on the beach, nice and warm, yay, right? What's happening to the sun over the ocean that you're looking out at? Beating down in the ocean too. What's happening to the water there? It's warming up. Some of it's evaporating. Okay? So you've increased the temperature in the air and moisture in the air, and it rises, right? Until it rises over warm land, and then basically that is the reason or the origin of what we call a sea breeze. All right, warm air rises over land and pulls cooler air off of the water. That is a sea breeze. You know that you go to Florida and you sit on the beach, it's a little bit cooler, you get a sea breeze, right? That is why that's happening. All right? And it's about the movement of air masses that are based upon temperature, because what happens to hot air? It rises. Okay? So hot air rises and pulls cooler air up. Now what happens at night? Sun goes down, what's going to happen to the air over the land versus over the water? What cools faster? Land or water? Land. So it cools faster. What's going to happen? It's going to draw the air out back over the ocean, right? So air rises over the warmer water and draws cooler air from the back, right? So it's replaced by the warmer air from offshore. So it tends to mean a more moderate temperature. That's why it doesn't get very, very hot in the Caribbean, right? It doesn't get to 95, 100, 110 degrees because of the air movements, okay? That's much different than, say, in the desert where it just hot air, sun's beating on the land, hot air rises and temperatures go up because there's no movement of air off of a cooler body of water. Okay? Mountains. All right, we're going to talk about land masses, mountains. All right, what do you see here? What's happening in this infographic? So we just said airflow goes from sort of ocean, cooler temperature, cooler temperature being drawn in from the ocean as air masses rise over warm terrestrial environments. Now what's occurring? So it comes to the mountain, and what does the mountain do? It basically pushes it up, right? So when it pushes it up, it also increases moisture. It condenses that. It puts it towards, as the air mass is pushed at higher levels of the atmosphere, it condenses. It then causes moisture, right? Precipitation occurs on one edge of the mountain. What's happening on the other side, what we call the leeward side? How much moisture is there? Less, right? Because the air mass now can drop down and all the moisture has been released from the air. The leeward side ends up having little to no precipitation. Okay? So the rising air releases moisture on the windward side, okay, and creates a rain shadow as it absorbs moisture on the leeward side. Okay? Many deserts are found in the rain shadow of mountains. All right? So if we were to look at North America, where is Las Vegas is in the middle of a desert, yes? How many of you have been to Vegas? Okay. Las Vegas is in the middle of a desert, right? Where is Las Vegas located? What is west of Las Vegas? Dina, California, right? What? What's west of Las Vegas? Mountains. What mountain range is that? The Sierra Nevada. Okay. What is beyond further west of the Sierra Nevada range? Basically California, right? And then you end up that's the Pacific coast. So same thing happens. Warm, cool air comes in from the Pacific, okay, rises over the Sierra Nevada mountain range, lots of precipitation there, okay, you have lots of forests and lots of precipitation, and then on the leeward side you end up with desert with your rain shadow, which is the Nevada deserts, okay? Also, mountains affect the amount of sunlight reaching an area. Think about sun rises in the east and sets in the west. What else is happening on the western side or the eastern side of the Sierra Nevada mountain range as the sun's setting? Actually tends to be less sunlight, depending on the height of the mountain, of course. All right. So, in the northern hemisphere, southern facing slopes, right, receive more sunlight than northern facing slopes. So what's how many of you were in Boy Scouts when you were a kid? Yeah, none. Okay. What's one way you can figure out direction if you get lost in the woods? Moss is on the north side of the trees. Why? This reason. Moss tends to grow in a in an area where there's less sunlight. So it receives a lot of moisture, less sunlight, and so you don't get a lot of plants or high living or types of leafy plants that grow there, but you get moss that grows on the north side of trees. So you can always figure out which way's general direction north is. Okay? Same thing happens to my house. My house faces east. Okay? So I have side of the house that's north, side of the house that's south. All right? On the north side is a driveway, and there's all moss in the driveway where the sun basically doesn't shine, or very little sunshine during the day. Okay? I put my garden on the south side of the house. Why? Gets more sunlight. Okay? So then the plants grow, vegetables grow, and I get to eat for free all summer long. Okay? Other thing, what happens to temperature as you go up in elevation? It decreases. Okay? So you go up the top of Mount Washington, which is probably in New Hampshire, which is one of the most extreme environments.
It's freezing twice.
Hmm?
I climbed it
All right. What's the weather like up there?
twice. It's cold.
It's cold. It's one of the most extreme environments probably in the northern hemisphere. Okay? Because of the wind, the temperature, etc. that goes on because of the geography and the elevation. Okay? So, climates and terrestrial biomes. What is a biome? Major life zone. Thanks for reading, Emily. All right, so a biome is basically could be considered a part of an ecosystem. Okay? But it's where certain things, plants and animals live. All right? And it's based upon the distribution of characteristic plants and animals. All right? But a biome is characterized by a couple things. Temperature, the amount of precipitation, okay? So, which is directly related to climate, right? So climate is extremely important in determining why terrestrial biomes are found where they are, right? Why Oregon, for instance, is considered a rainforest type environment because of the amount of precipitation it has, the amount of moderate temperature it has. Okay, while the Northeast is considered a certain forest, all right, versus Canada, which is even a different type of forest. Okay, based upon the amount of precipitation, temperature, seasonality, etc. That changes what types of plants and animals live there, right? So if you go up to Canada, what type of animals and trees would you find? Moose, okay? So you sort of have an example, a picture in your head of what Canadian wildlife is, right? There's harsh winters, lots of snow. What type of trees? You have a field of Christmas trees in front of you, right? What? Right? It's a coniferous forest. It has a different type of plant and vegetation than the Northeast, than southern North America, etc. Okay? But that is directly related to climate. Okay? So here is the general layout of your 8 types of biomes. Okay? So you have your tundra, your temperate broadleaf forest, your northern coniferous forests, right? Savanna, temperate grasslands, the desert, and so on. Okay? But you can look at let's look at tropical forests for instance. Okay? Where are they all located? They're between the tropics, right? Between the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn. Why? They have lots of moisture. What else? Nick, what else? What else happens in that area? Lots of moisture. It's a tropical rainforest, so it has heat, temperature, right? That's different from Oregon, which I've been saying is a quote-unquote rainforest, because there's a difference in temperature. It's not a tropical rainforest. Instead, it's part of a northern coniferous forest, okay? But it's based upon the temperature, all right? Temperature, amount of precipitation, etc. And that's different than the tundra you see in extreme northern Canada and Alaska and Russia. All right? So, we can talk about what a climograph is. All right? Basically, it plots temperature and precipitation in a different region. And depending upon those two factors, those two are probably the most important factors in determining what biome we're talking about, okay? Or what plants and animals can live in that area. So that a desert is characteristic by what? How much precipitation? Little or a lot? Little. In terms of temperature. Low, moderate, high. High, right? So, looks like, okay? So you can look at there and say, here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different biomes that are plotted. Your annual mean temperature on the y-axis and annual mean precipitation on the x-axis. All right. More precipitation, high temperature, you end up with a tropical rainforest. Okay. Very little precipitation but high temperature, you end up with it in the desert. Okay? And then you can look at all the differences in between there. All right? Questions on that? So this is an example of a climograph. Here that there's areas, okay, where grassland, broadleaf, and coniferous forests sort of overlap. Okay? So you'll have, think about that in sort of like Wisconsin, Minnesota. Okay? That's an area, this is sort of an area where the Midwest, the grassland ends, beginning of broadleaf and coniferous forest begins, all right? But still, it might be a little too cold to have a complete broadleaf forests. What effect is climate change going to have on biomes? What's going to happen over time? Talk about global warming. What's going to happen to this? Why? So temperature is going to change. So if it gets, say, if the average mean temperature increases over time, what's going to happen to these biomes here? They're basically going to disappear, right? Because the vegetation, et cetera, that live in the tundra aren't adapted to live in warmer environments. So basically, this temperature goes up, and the tundra will end up becoming what? Say it'll become a northern coniferous forest. Okay, and northern coniferous forest will end up becoming broadleaf forests based upon changes in the overall temperature. Now, what changes these landscapes or these biomes? Right, disturbances. Right, and actually, some natural disturbances are actually part of the biome itself, or the biome actually depends upon these disturbances. Okay, every year, for the most part, in the southeast United States, there's an incidence of brush fires, forest fires, basically. All right, but the fires are actually part of the ecology of the biome, of the savanna as it is. all right? It actually helps to remove dead, unwanted, or other plants that are invading, and allows those other short types of plants characteristic of the savanna to thrive, right? It's sort of a natural clearing. It's a disturbance, it's a natural disturbance that clears out and changes the community, all right, for a given point in time, okay? Now, human disturbances is probably the most important of these, right, or the most drastic. We change a river or a wetland in order for shipping or whatever in Narragansett Bay, and that changes how everything works, all right? You have an oil spill in the Gulf. That changes, that's a disturbance, a human disturbance that now is changing the biome as it might be, all right? So frequent flyers kill woody plants, preventing the woodlands from a savanna, all right? General features of your terrestrial biomes, all right? They're usually named for physical or climatic factors and for vegetation, so forests, lots of trees, right? Coniferous forests, type of trees, broadleaf forest, a different type of tree, right? That's characteristic of that biome. And there's an area of what we call integration, okay? Or an ecotone, all right? So when we go, if we went back to that graph, all right, so an ecotone, or that sort of gray area, that transition area, can be wide or narrow depending upon, all right? Vertical layering is an important feature of biomes. Not only, say, depending upon temperature, but this is the amount of light that gets to the, say, forest floor. And this is very important in tropical rainforests, where you have very tall trees that are looking for lots of light, so they end up producing what's called a canopy, okay? So, an upper canopy, a lower tree layer, shrub understory, there's ground layers of herbaceous plants, the forest floor, the root layer. Think about the layering that goes from top, where these trees extend up and they produce this big canopy of leaves that are meant to produce or capture as much sunlight as possible. And you have animals that live in the trees and et cetera, right? But underneath that, there's animals and vegetation that live underneath in that sort of tree layer below the canopy, and then some that live on the floor. And they are adapted to the amount of light, precipitation, et cetera, that is available to them as a result of that canopy being produced. All right, so there's lots of diverse habitats and animal life that can live in those sort of niches, okay? And so this is where we end up. Your terrestrial biomes are characterized by distribution, precipitation, temperature, plants, and animals. And those are the 5 characteristics you have to come up with for your 8 terrestrial biomes. Tropical rainforest, all right, tropical forest, desert, savanna, chaparral, grassland, northern coniferous forest, temperate broadleaf forest, and tundra, okay? And you'll do that on your biomes worksheet, right? That will be the basis for your quiz on Monday, okay? So you have your terrestrial biome worksheet, and then you also, part of that will be your aquatic biomes worksheet as well, all right? Questions? All right, so when you're filling out this worksheet, I expect you to look up, types of plants and animals that are found in these biomes, okay? You should know average mean temperature, average mean precipitation, all right? And then for distribution, basically where they are, okay? For the most part, rainforests are found between the Tropic of Cancer, Tropic of Capricorn. They're in that tropical region based for high temperature, etc. Okay? That sheet will be posted right after class today. It was gonna be posted prior to class, but there was an internet outage this morning. Questions? All right, I'll see you guys on Monday. No class on Friday.